everyone, welcome to Sunday morning, and only 2 weeks to go until the school holidays. Good news and bad news today. Good news is we're going to have a quiz on Zoom, so if you haven't got your questions in, get those done before we meet. And bad news, I'm sorry, after weeks of your wonderful videos, you're going to have to put up with me today. But the story I'm going to tell you is in honor of a very special new person that has been born just a few weeks ago. It's Anna's little sister, Abigail. We're going to be looking at Abigail in the Bible. So, who was Abigail? Well, the Bible says straight up that her name meant that she was beautiful and she was intelligent. And it kind of sounds like a good thing. She's married to this rich man, and in those days, your riches were counted in how many sheep and things you had. He had 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats. He's super rich. And so the situation is that David is on the run from Saul. And this is probably the hardest time in David's life. This was probably a bigger test for David than when he killed the Goliath, because that happened really quickly. And his years being chased around the country with Saul wanting to kill him. And he's come to stay in the same region of the country where Abigail and her husband live. And he's living up in the hills where Nabal has all his sheep. And for that time, David's men protect the sheep, they protect the workers so that nothing bad happens to them. And for months, they're just there really looking after Nabal's interests. And it gets to sheep shearing time. Now, this is a time where Nabal's going to get loads of profit out of his sheep. So he's planning this big party for his workers. Now, David has no way to get money. He's an outcast. And he comes to Nabal. He says, guy, we've been looking after your men. We've been looking after your sheep. You'll have noticed that you've got a bigger profit this year than you've ever had before. How about giving me something for my men to eat? And Nabal turns around and goes, who are you? Who are your men? I don't want to be part of this. You're just outlaws. And he's really rude to David. And so David gets furious. And he goes back to his men. And his men are also feeling pretty bad. They've been spending months being kind just to have it turned in their faces. And so David and his men get armed, and they get ready to come and kill everybody in Abigail's household. So the men that work for Nabal come to Abigail and they say, Abigail, Nabal has done something really stupid. These men were so kind to us when we were looking after the sheep, and he's just been really rude to them, and now they're going to come and kill us. And so Abigail, I think they were kind of used to bringing all their problems to Abigail, to be honest. So Abigail gets a whole load of food ready. She turns her husband's meanness into a huge gesture of generosity. And she gets the servants prepared, bakes hundreds of loaves of bread, just packs a whole load of donkeys with loads of really nice treats. And she says, off you go in front of me. Now she realizes she's got to be pretty clever here. This is a group of very angry men who are used to fighting. They know how to kill. And she needs to calm David down before she meets him. So off go the donkeys. She comes up at the end of that. You imagine you're David, you're pretty angry, and suddenly you see coming up the road donkeys laden with really nice food. There's meat, there's cakes, there's dessert, there's bread, there's everything that you could want. And he's kind of getting curious, and at the end comes Abigail, and Abigail bows down to him and says, look, I'm so sorry. You're absolutely right. My husband shouldn't have said that to you. But look, I've brought you food now. I hope your men will enjoy it. Why don't you just give that food to your men? She knows that if the men can kind of come down from their anger, it's going to be a lot easier for her then to talk to David. And then she says, you know what, David? God has always had a plan for your life. He's been faithful to you. I see in you a man of God. Don't give it up just because my husband has been foolish. Don't ruin what God is going to do in your life by giving you a guilty conscience because you've killed innocent people. And David thinks again and goes, oh, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much for saving me from this. And she goes away. The men enjoy their food. And the Nabal and his men also have a huge big party to celebrate the profit that they've got from shearing the sheep. Nabal gets really drunk, and Abigail has to in the end tell him what she's done, and he gets really mad and has a stroke and dies 10 days later. David finds out that her husband has died and asks Abigail if she wants to become his wife, and she goes and becomes his wife. So that's the story. What could that story teach us? Okay, so what this has to teach us, I think that everything that is good in us comes out when we're in difficult times. And I think if what is good in us comes from God and from knowing God, what comes out is wisdom and helpfulness and some really good things. Now, the Bible doesn't say this, but I think Abigail must have had a really good relationship with God. God had obviously really worked in her life and she knew him quite well, because the way she responds is totally as God would want her to respond. I think that always needs to be our aim in life. Get to know God and let him change us from the inside. So she's a person that people come to with their problems. Some of you are probably like that. I can really imagine that when you're at school on a normal school day, people that are upset or people that have got things going on, they like to come and tell you about them. You notice that the workers in Abigail's house, the first thing that they do is come and find her and tell her what's going on. And I think as well, she's also a person that is stuck in an issue that also faces us. Two people that are fighting. How often are we in a situation where we've got two friends or two people in our class and they're fighting and we're stuck in the middle? And Abigail manages to deal with this situation really wisely. She also, one of the things that she does in how she acts is she acts the opposite to everybody else around her. So Nabal is really mean. He's kind of sneering and looking down on David. And David is angry. Abigail is neither. She doesn't get angry. She acts with a lot of generosity. And we need to be really careful in our lives that we don't get sucked into other people's meanness, other people's ways of working. Now, she was incredibly brave, and it takes a lot of courage when people are fighting around us, whether it's fighting with words or with actions, whatever, to face up to her. I mean, this is an army that was just wanting to kill, and she walked up to them and talked them down. She was amazing, and God gave her incredible courage there. She acted with a lot of wisdom that came from good character. So I think in her heart, she was living with a mean man, but she kept generosity in her heart. She was a really nice person. I mean, those fruits of the Spirit that we sing about, we can see them in Abigail's life. She also spoke really wisely, and when we listen to her words, we see that she can see God working behind all the stuff that's going on in her life. So she says to David, David, don't give up. God has really got a plan for your life. Don't give up on that by making this stupid, horrible mistake of killing people. You know, you need to have faith that God is going to work this out for your good, but don't take matters into your own hands. And she speaks truth into David's life. And sometimes we need to have those words that we can say to people when they're really having a hard time, and her understanding of God and his purposes really come out. And then just finally, God deals with her problem for her. I mean, it must have been really horrible for her to be married to a man like Nabal, who was just making such mean and nasty decisions all the time. And she didn't do anything against him. She didn't fight against him, but God dealt with him. God took him out of the picture and gave Abigail the husband that she deserved, David, who she's also already just been like a good wife too. So whatever your problem, whatever you're facing, whatever you face with your friendships in now or in the future, just remember Abigail, and remember that God will work through you and will be a blessing not only to you but to everybody else. Thanks everybody. If you've got to the end of this video, you've had a lot of patience. Have a really great day and see you later on soon. Bye.